Hello and welcome to so many countries. I was watching you write in the chat box as you were coming in. We have a lot of people from Mexico, one or two people from Peru and Brazil, somebody from Manaus in Brazil, Argentina, South Africa, Romania, Germany, Turkey, Estonia I saw as well. And I'm sorry if I've missed anybody out, but it's wonderful to have so many different people here today. Thank you so much for coming, for taking time to be here. That's absolutely wonderful. I just want to say a couple of things about the title of the talk, which is Surviving These Times as Best We Can. I know that these times is different for different people. Everybody is having a completely different experience of the pandemic. And I know some people's experience is far worse than others. I know that some of you will have had personal experience of the pandemic, and I'm very sorry if any of you have suffered any loss or have had COVID in your family or friends. It's a very hard time. Here I am, I've been very lucky, and it's all right me rabbiting on about surviving. I know it's not always easy. I've been lucky, I've been fortunate for the moment. So what I'd like to do today is explore some ideas that may be helpful to you in the days and months ahead. An alternative title of this talk might be How Not to Go Completely Bonkers During This Pandemic, or bananas is another way of putting that. How can we keep some kind of sanity, some kind of equilibrium during these very difficult and unexpected days that we're living now? None of this is new. You know everything I'm going to tell you already. And it's the kind of thing I've been talking about for years in one way or another, the importance of looking after yourself in different kinds of ways. But the reason that I think we need to talk about it again is that there is a very big difference between knowing and doing. We can know something and think, oh, that's a good idea, yeah. And then just not do anything about it. And it remains at the theoretical stage. So that's the first thing. So maybe this will be a kind of wake-up call to start doing some of the things that you know about. You may be doing them already, but maybe there are a few more. Another thing is it's good to remind ourselves. We forget, we do something for a while and then we forget about it. And sometimes it's nice to be reminded how useful that was. And when I say ourselves, I don't just mean you, I mean me. I need reminding. I often forget to do things, and it's good to make myself remember through sharing these ideas with you. And another thing to mention is it's not just these times, is it? It's all the time. These are useful ways of being in the world at any time, any challenging time, but any time at all. And what's really good is if we can get into the habit of doing these things so they become second nature. I'm keeping this sweet and simple, K-I-S-S, keep it sweet and simple. Nothing fancy, no fancy interaction or stuff. I will not be asking you to interact, but I will be asking you just from time to time to take a break and just think. I know you're very busy people and maybe you don't have time to do this very often. It's just take a moment to think and reflect and then move on. Okay, so I might sometimes ask you to move instead of to think, or I might ask you to do both. If you'd like to share your thoughts, please do in the chat bar. I'll be looking at it occasionally, but Christina and Lucy are there to be picking things up all the time. and we'll be answering any administrative questions that you have. They'll also be sharing a link at the end to some material that you may be interested in having from this webinar. These ideas are a little bit from everywhere. Perhaps a more serious way of saying that is they have a range of sources. All those fields are fields that I've been involved with myself personally, not medical research. With the medical research, I'm interested in keeping up to date with the kinds of things that are happening. So all those areas have fed into what I'm talking about today. And I like the term that somebody once used, which is an informed eclecticism. And I love it when things connect up, when you find an idea in one area, in one field, and then you find a similar idea in another field. And the same idea is being promulgated from different places. And I think that's great when that happens. And that's kind of happening here. NLP, the last one on the list, there may be other things as well, hence the ... has a lot of useful things to give us. And I'll be mentioning it a little bit later in this session as well. But there's one instance of it on that same page, which is the circle with the 3 pairs of letters. And I'd like you to think for a moment what that is. What on earth does it mean? Any clues at all? I mean, if you want to write your thoughts in the chat box, that's fine. If you just want to have a think, that's fine. And if you want to do neither of those things, that's fine too. I'm going to tell you anyway. That's what we do as teachers, isn't it? We ask people to think. And then when we don't get a reply, we say, well, I'll tell you anyway. That's not very good practice, because what it teaches people is I won't need to think, because in a moment she or he is going to tell me anyway. So I can just sit here and wait. But this is a little bit different today because we only have an hour. And so I'm probably going to end up answering some of my own questions just to keep in the time. So let's have a look at this model. The IS is what you are feeling, your internal state. So that's here. The IP is what you are thinking, your internal processing in your head. And the EB is external behavior, what you're actually doing. And the SW is so what? Well, this is a model that basically is saying something we all know, that these 3 things, feeling, thinking, and doing, are all interconnected. They're all related. If you change one, the others change too. So they influence each other. And so it's an interesting descriptive model, but it's also a prescriptive model. For example, if I'm feeling bad, my thoughts are likely to be negative, and my behavior, my performance is likely to be affected. If I change what I'm doing, if I get up and go for a walk, for example, it will change my feelings and it will allow me to think differently about something. You can start at any level and it will affect the others. So it's a useful kind of model, which is at the basis of a lot of what we're talking about today, how you can use one thing to change another. One of the easiest things always to change is our external behavior. If I do something different, I will think a little bit differently about it, and I will certainly feel differently. Okay, so basically that's what that model is. And that model, by the way, is called the Mercedes model. Surprise, surprise. Now, what on earth is that? 7 something. Does that look familiar to any of you? Does anybody have any idea what those 7 things are? Do write in the box if you'd like to. Rules, okay. Be patient. I will be very patient. Be positive, okay. Yeah, you're filling in the blanks, that's fine. But do you know what the actual, how they cohere into something special? Think wise, absolutely, think wise. Be polite. Okay, I'll tell you, I'll go through them first and then I'll tell you what they are. The first one is actually be positive. Sorry, be proactive. Many people think it's be positive, but it's not. It's be proactive, which means if there's something you want to do, do it. Don't just wait for someone to suggest it or come to you and ask you. Go for it. Jump in. Begin with the end in mind. Is about having objectives. Know where you're going. Think about the future. Think about what you want and how you're going to get there. Put first things first. So think about your priorities. What is important in your life? And spend time on what's important and not on things which are less important or completely unimportant. But that's not often what we do, is it? We tend to spend a lot of time faffing about doing things which are not terribly important, and the really big things that are important don't get done. Think win-win, so that if I win, you win. If I get something good, I want you to get something good too. So this is very ecological. It's about behaving and thinking in an ecological, responsible way. If I get something, I want you to get something too. Otherwise, it doesn't work. The next one, seek first to understand, then to be understood. So it's not about you understanding me, it's about me understanding you. And that involves listening. This one is really about quality listening, giving other people space to tell you how they feel and what they want, and begin to understand them before imposing your own ideas. The sin is short for synergize, which is to do with teamwork. 2 heads are better than 1, and 3 or 4 or 5 heads are even better. So getting skills, different skills from different people and putting those together. And the last one, which is the one I want to look at particularly today, sharpen the saw, S-A-W. And these 7 things are this. Yes, some of you got the sharpen the saw, well done. Synergize, great. The 7 habits of highly effective people, which was a book written by Stephen Covey in 1989. Okay, so let's have a look. And there is the saw. That's a very dramatic drawing. You can sharpen your saw even if you're wearing a pink dress. Okay, interesting kind of image. It's very masculine and it's very feminine at the same time. So I'm just going to spend a moment on this concept of Covey's, and I've changed it. He says sharpen the saw. I like to say sharpen your saw because it's somehow much more responsible. It's much more about you owning the responsibility. And he talks about doing that in 4 ways. And there are the 4 ways written down there. And we're going to be incorporating that thinking into what I'm going to be talking about in a moment. But I'd just like to tell you the story pretty much that Covey told us in the book. I've changed the gender of the protagonist. In Covey, he talks about a man, and I have made her into a woman. And she is walking, a woman, one day in the wood, and she sees a woodcutter sawing away, working really hard to cut down a tree. Working. And he's not getting anywhere very fast. He's not making headway. And so she watches him for a bit, and she looks and thinks and observes, and then she turns to him and she says, "Excuse me, why don't you sharpen your saw? I think you'd find the work would go much more quickly if you did." And the man hardly looks up. He carries on sawing and he says, "I haven't got time to do that. I've got to get this wood sawn down. This tree's got to come down." And that maybe is a little bit what we do in our lives. We're so busy doing stuff, we don't step back and think, maybe I need to pay attention to my physical welfare, or my mental welfare, or my social emotional welfare, or my spiritual welfare, whatever that means for you. Not necessarily religious, it might be, but could be a load of other things. Okay, so this is an opportunity this afternoon to sharpen your saw. Another interesting idea, that we can't control things. We can't control things outside of us. We cannot control the coronavirus. We can only act prudently to that extent. What we can control, and the only thing we can control, is how we react to what's going on around us. And that, again, is what we're going to be looking at today. That doesn't mean to say that we can control entirely what goes on inside of us either. Sometimes it's harder than others, but we can control to a certain extent how we react to external events. Okay. And last thing to say before we embark on my voyage of discovery is that these ideas are primarily for you. They're for you personally as teachers and people and individuals. If you want to use them for your class, of course you can. These are things that maybe you want to talk about with them, whether you're teaching in a classroom or in an online classroom. These are all useful things. Some of the activities you can also adapt to use with your students, and then they will have the benefit of them too. Great. In fact, let's just look at all those are South Korean teachers who I was giving a workshop to a few years back. Let's do something physical while we're just looking at them doing something physical. So can I ask you, if you're sitting, if you can just move your chair away back from your computer and put your hands above your head, stretch up towards the ceiling, and then stretch down towards your toes. You won't be able to see me. I'll probably disappear beneath the desk. That's okay. I'll tell you what to do. Just do it. So stretch up to the ceiling and then stretch down towards your toes. By the way, if you have any back problems or any injuries, don't do this. If you know yourself what you can and can't do physically, okay? Do it very carefully if you decide to do it. So stretch up, stretch down to your toes or towards your toes. Go as far as is comfortable, don't strain. Stretch up and stretch down. And if you're doing any teaching or any activity, sitting at a computer for a while, it's really important just to do that from time to time, or to do something which gets you moving so you are not continually sitting on your bottom. Not good. Okay. So what I want to do today is to take you through Survive, which are 7 suggestions using each of those letters. They are suggestions, they're not hard and fast rules. They are things which I try to do in my own life. So this is a very kind of personal journey of discovery. I'm going to be illustrating each one. We'll pop into each one, explore it a little, and then move on to the next one. And I'll be illustrating that with pictures of my family or my world in some way. Okay. And like I say, these are only suggestions. The other thing to say to you is that you might want to make a small change in any one of these. Small is good. It doesn't have to be mega, We don't need to make big changes to have an effect. Small changes can make a very big difference. Remember that, it's really important. Someone's put a brain gym in the chat box. Yes, that was a sort of brain gym that we do. Brain gym is great, well done. So let's have a look at the first one, which is S for stay as positive as you can. And that relates very much to Covey's mental saw. Yeah. Illustrated by a photo of my young grandson, whose name is Rafa, because his dad is Brazilian. And he's 7 years old, and he's looking very positive, which is great. He doesn't, I have to admit, always look quite so positive, but that's a very positive picture. So I thought that would be a good one to use. Positive's a kind of interesting thing. We want to be as positive as we can, but not necessarily too much or for too long. By that I mean, sometimes it's not appropriate if you're with somebody who is not feeling very positive to be super positive, because that's a kind of mismatch and is very insensitive. I don't know whether you find this too, but I sometimes find someone who is relentlessly positive can be very irritating. So while it's about veering towards the positive, it's not about being overwhelmingly irritating. Cheery Cheryl. But to help us sort of tread that path, ABC, there's some ideas here that I want to share with you. Very, very simple, and we'll explore them very briefly. The first one I find incredibly helpful, affirmations. So these are things which you repeat to yourself again and again, either out loud or in your head, depending on where you are or what you feel like. They're in the present tense. They're about what you are now, so that they become a sort of self-fulfilling prophecy. So for example, I'll tell you what my favorite one is that I use a lot, and it's okay, I'm okay, I can do this. It's okay, I'm okay, I can do this. It's okay, I'm okay, I can do this. Now, that's one I use a lot in any situation where I feel stressed or about to do something challenging, like give a webinar. So I was actually using my affirmation earlier on. And it just makes me feel calmer and more confident. Okay, you're very welcome to steal it. And you're also very welcome to start thinking, if you don't yet have one, you may already have one. And if you'd like to share one, please do. If you don't yet have one and you don't really fancy mine, take a moment right now just to think, what would be a good affirmation for you? What would really help you? Doesn't need to be very long, very short, present tense. Have a think just for a moment. How good is this? Look in the chat box. You can do it. Yes, that's a great one. I'm alive. Yes, thank you, Maria. Okay. I'm here. I'm optimistic. Great. Lovely ones. Well done. Okay. And this is something you can use with your students. What you can do with them is you can give them some examples, tell them about your own, maybe find some from elsewhere, and get them to write affirmations that work for them. Not only is it a great language exercise, it's a great reassuring exercise. It's a great boost to have. I can do that. I'm grateful. I'm healthy. I'm just reading out some of the ones you're writing down in the chat bar. Lovely. Well done. I have a job. I am healthy. Yes, that's a very good one. I am healthy is a great one to be using at the moment, isn't it? It really is a perfect one for the time. I am happy. I am positive. Great. Well done. Super. Moving on to B and C. which actually link together, but 1B is more for students and C is more for you personally. Best questions. So getting students to focus on positive things rather than negative things by asking them questions that take them in that direction. So at the end of a lesson, you might say to them, okay, what was the best thing about this lesson? What did you enjoy most? Or after the weekend, say, what thing you ate this weekend? Who's the best person you met? What was the best thing you did? Best. So getting them to focus on what's been good or what's the best thing you're looking forward to that weekend, next weekend, etc. Okay. Count your blessings. Yes, so often we focus on what's wrong or what's not good in our life. With a little bit of an effort, we could switch that and focus more on what is good. We forget what's good and what's going right. Okay. So maybe say to yourself at the end of a day, what was good about today? What did I enjoy today? What did I learn today? Who did I meet who made a difference to me today? Those kinds of questions. You could also ask them in the morning and say something like, what am I looking forward to today? What's going to be good about today? I've got a webinar. Wow. And what you might do to remind you is put those up by your bed morning and evening, so you have a reminder to do that. And now that I'm telling you to do that, I realize that I haven't done this for a while myself. I used to do it every day and I got out of the habit. So I'm going to do that today. I'm going to put them back on the wall by my bed and do the same. The idea, by the way, originally came from Anthony Robbins. I mentioned him earlier with a quotation. And I'll be mentioning a book at the end of the session. He calls them power questions. Not sure about that, but anyway, useful, helpful questions to help you feel more confident and to feel more positive about your life. Okay, moving on. U is for up and move. We need to get out and do stuff. We know that when we move our body, it helps our mental state. So lift your body, lift your spirit. It doesn't matter what you do, but you do need to do something. And I know sometimes you're very busy and there are other priorities, but this is also a priority because it's to do with your mental and your physical health. So that is a picture of my family again. Little Rafa, you've met him once. Behind him is my daughter Tamsin, her husband John, and there's my husband Bob, and the dog is at the back. You can just about see him, Frank, for a walk at Brent Cross in the fields. Okay. It doesn't matter what you do something you enjoy and do it regularly. They say that the ideal exercise time is either 30 minutes of moderate exercise every day, which is brisk walking, something like is happening in the photo, or 15 minutes vigorous exercise, jogging, running, cycling up mountains, whatever works for you. I tend to go for the moderate, and I walk often. What I'm finding during the pandemic is that everywhere is so crowded because everybody's walking. It's quite hard now to find a place where you don't have to continually kind of dodge people and get out of their way and keep socially distanced. We found actually in the end, there's a cemetery up the road, a huge cemetery, where very few people go and where we can go and walk around. And that's a very peaceful, lovely place to be, actually. So think about, here we are, another moment for you to think. What are you already doing? What maybe could you do more of? How would you make more time for that too? Or what could you begin to do that you haven't yet done? So just think about that for a moment. And then we'll move on to the classroom. We don't just need to move outside the classroom. It's a really good idea to move inside too. We've talked about that already. A lot of these ideas, by the way, are ideas which are embodied in Jetstream and in your classroom, energizing your classroom. Doesn't matter whether you're teaching in a real classroom or whether you're teaching online at a computer. It's really important to move from time to time. So again, let's just take a moment to stand up this time. And I could just carry on the webinar standing up, and you can do this with your students too. Get your students to stand up. It changes the dynamic, it changes the energy. If you want to add something else to that, I won't move back too far. Apparently I will go fuzzy. You can do some exercise which goes with it. So you might just do simple things like rolling your shoulders for a few moments, get rid of tension in your upper back. Okay, shake your hands, get the blood to your hands. Do a little bit of brain gym you mentioned earlier. I'm lifting my left leg and bringing in my right shoulder, my right elbow. Left elbow to right leg. Right elbow to left knee. Left elbow to right knee. Try to do it slowly, and it will also challenge your balance, which is great. Okay. Anything at all, any stretches, little exercises, it doesn't matter. It doesn't need to take long. People sometimes say, oh, I haven't got time for that. It's going to take too long. Needn't take long. It can just take a few seconds. But when you sit down again, you're probably noticing now, I hope, you feel a little bit re-energized, a little bit more oomph. Yeah. Okay, moving on. R for rest or relax. That's a picture of my daughter who was getting some well-deserved sleep because her little baby was also sleeping for once, and that's my husband again. Now that's Leo, and he was born on November the 30th, 2020. So he's a little COVID baby. You may not want to crash out like that or be able to do that. That might not be your preferred way of getting rest and relaxation, but there are other ways. And one of them is breathing. Controlled breathing exercises are wonderful because if you can control your breathing, you can control your state. Very, very important. If you go online, you'll find loads and loads of breathing exercises. You'll also find, if you Google, COVID breathing exercises, because COVID is very much a disease of the lungs and the respiratory system. It's really important to keep your lungs working well as you can. It will help to fight the infection. Loads of different exercises to choose from. I leave you to do that, but I'll just teach you today just a very simple one that I use, and I do it every morning, where you breathe in for a count, you hold for a count, and then you breathe out for a count. Okay, and we'll do it maybe with 5, but I'll do it with 5 at least. You can choose what you would like to do and just do it alongside. Okay, so I'm going to count, breathe in for 5, hold for 5, breathe out for 5. So I breathe in through my nose, I hold, and I breathe out through my mouth. Again, breathe in, hold, breathe out, breathe in, hold, Breathe out. You can alter those. It doesn't have to be 5-5-5. It could be 5-7-5 or 5-6-7 or 5-7-10. The longer out breath is the more relaxing. The shorter out breath is more energizing. So you can switch the ratio. Okay, moving on. Oh no, I want to just teach you to palm as well. When you're spending a long time in front of a screen, your eyes can get very tired, and your students' eyes will also get tired. I take off my glasses, now I can't see a thing. Doesn't matter, I'm going to teach you this without my glasses. So this is an exercise from Vision Workshops, and it's a great one for soothing tired eyes and helping your vision. So what you do very simply, it's called palming, P-A-L-M-I-N-G. You rub your hands together to generate heat, and you put the heel of your hand over your closed eyelids and see black, and make what you're seeing in your eyes as black as you can, like crude oil or tar. Black, 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 and take your hands off. And notice how refreshing that is. Do it one more time. Rub your palms together. Heel of hand into your eyes. Gently, don't push against the eyelid. Just gently rest the heel of your hand on your eye. And see black. Black, black, black. Okay. Or you might try using a couche. Do you know these funny little plastic things? They're used sometimes in schools just to help students to de-stress before taking an exam. You can play with them, you can massage your hands with them, you can throw them from hand to hand. You can just use them as a sort of confidence booster and a relaxer. Okay. I don't know if I can ask Lucy at this stage. I have down the side of my screen and blocking my chat box are all the names of Christina, Lucia, Lars and Lucy. I don't know if it's possible to get rid of that. I could move my chat box, but it will get in the way of that's better. Okay. Right in the middle of my screen now. You feel relaxed. I'm so glad. Maria Sabina. Good. I'm glad you're feeling relaxed. I am too, actually. Good. Okay, so moving on to the next one. V for voice your fears. Now, this is more to do with Covey's social emotional one. And it's about talking to other people, sharing. A lot of us are anxious during this time. Why wouldn't we be? These are unknown things that we're experiencing. It's completely new. We're bound to be afraid. We're bound to be concerned and worried and anxious about all kinds of things, about ourselves, about the people we love, about our family, about whether to have the vaccination or not, or so many things to be afraid of. Share your fears. Now, if you're wondering who that woman is in the picture, that's Diana. And Diana is my walk and talk friend. We meet once a week and we walk and we talk. We actually talk more than we walk, but we do a little bit of walking. And what's really great is that we keep a social distance and we walk through the woods and we chat and we tell each other things that we've been experiencing or we're worried about. And you know what? We often find that if I say something that's been worrying me, she'll say, oh my God, I've been worrying about that too. And that's really reassuring. So don't think you're alone in fearing whatever it is you fear. Share the fear and find out that other people might also be afraid. And that's very, very comforting. So I'd like you to think just for a moment, who is your Diana? Who's the person that you can talk to and share with either in reality, socially distanced, or at the end of a telephone or phone or screen, or however you want to do that. Is there someone you can talk to? Think about that, and think about contacting them soon and having a good chat, because that's really helpful. Give you just a moment to think before moving on. I for immune system. We know that having a healthy immune system helps to fight infection. And all the things we've already mentioned, the exercise, the thinking positive, the rest, sleep, all those things, they all help our immune system. So I'm just going to mention a few more. We know that diet is crucial. I've got a picture there of lentils. Lentils with coconut milk and turmeric. Delicious and very nutritious. So diet is important, and we kind of know, don't we? We know there are better things and worse things to eat. And we also know that it's important to treat yourself from time to something that is not recommended as well, something nice and sugary. We have a wonderful Turkish bakery up the high road, and they do baklava, and they're full of pistachios and honey, and they are totally bad for you, but so totally delicious. Probiotics are important, and they're kind of not that easy to find other than in a supplement. They're in things like kefir and sauerkraut, which may or may not appeal to you, but you can get them in supplements. And supplements for vitamins as well. We know vitamin C is important. Are you getting enough vitamin C naturally from fruit and veg? Do you need to take supplement? Vitamin D is one that's been talked about more recently as being important. Sunshine helps us fight infection. And if we don't get much sunshine, then we can take supplements. Vitamin D supplements. Echinacea is also useful. And the last thing I want to mention here is something which I was really pleased to read about recently, is that short-term stress is really good at helping give your immune system a boost. So something like watching a scary movie is good for you. What is not good for you is long-term stress. But short-term stress, a quick scare, or if you give a presentation, that's quite a scary moment that you have beforehand very often. Very good boost to your immune system, sets the adrenaline running. And finally here, I want to mention something I used to do a lot of and will go back to doing, I'm building up to it, is cold water. A lot of research recently shows that cold water is really, really good in giving your immune system a huge boost, big shock to the system. So whether you do that through swimming in the sea or swimming in a lake, which you might do here in London, or whether you just simply have from time to time a cold shower. And that is really bracing, I tell you, because I've started to do that again recently, and it's wonderful. I look forward to it every day, and I come out feeling $1 million. It's brilliant. I feel it's doing me good. If the idea appeals to you, and I have to admit that it doesn't appeal to many people, but if it did, I would suggest you start carefully and don't immediately jump into a very cold shower, but that you work your way up to it. So maybe go to your hot shower and day by day turn down the temperature until you're cold, and then get used to it that way. What I tend to do is I wash in a hot shower and then finish in a cold shower. And it's cold, it's really cold. So a nice thought. For anybody fancy that? Yes, okay, I'm getting lots of messages. Interesting, thank you. Thank you. Lots of ideas there. V, the second V, visualize an okay future. What I haven't said is visualize an absolutely perfect, resplendent future. That may be. I think at the moment, most of us aren't quite sure what the future will bring, but we can still look forward to what we hope will happen. For example, spending more time with our family, even seeing some of our family that we haven't seen for a while. Maybe going somewhere we've been wanting to go and haven't been able to go. It's really important to have goals, even small goals, for the future, because goals get you going. You need to look forward to something. So I'd like you to think just for a moment about something that you would like to do once things get more or less back to normal, okay? Well, now we can't kind of know exactly what that will be like, but we can imagine. And we need to imagine. We need to have something that draws us to the future, that gets us out of bed in the morning, that's worth having. So I'd like you just to think for a moment, each of you, about what you would like to see happen after. Think of yourself in the future doing something you want to do. You can't yet do it now, but it's something you hope to do in the future. Maybe spending time with your family or with a friend you haven't seen for a long time. Maybe going somewhere, maybe traveling. Just think for a moment. I'm going to give you a bit of space and silence to do that. So what I'd like you to do is to imagine a scene in the future that you're doing something you've been wanting to do. And I'd like you to see it as clearly as you can in your mind. Who are you with? Or are you on your own maybe? That's okay too. Look around you. What are you seeing? What is special about this moment? And maybe add some audio. What are you hearing? Are there voices that are special to you? Is there music? Are there sounds of nature? Or is there silence? And what kind of feelings are you feeling in this moment with those people or on your own or listening to whatever sounds or with the silence? What are you feeling in that moment? Where are you feeling it? Is it somewhere in your chest? Is it in your stomach? Is it all over? Is it in your fingertips? How are you feeling this? What kind of a feeling is it? If you gave that feeling a color, what would it be? So just enjoy that experience, that imagined experience for a moment. And as you do that, allow a word to come to mind that somehow encapsulates that scenario. And just pay attention to whatever pops into your head. Don't necessarily search for it, just allow it to come. And know that in the future, just by saying this word to yourself, it will help you regain that sense of looking forward, of optimism to where you're going through this time, where you're heading. Okay, I'm getting some suggestions in the chat box and some ideas. Thank you. Okay, so come slowly and gently back to the webinar. I hope you found that enjoyable. This is something to practice by yourselves, by the way, if you want to do that. We will be one of the materials we'll be giving you or giving you a link for at the end of the session is a guided visualization. That's what we've just done. We've done a very mini one. There's a longer one that you will be given, which comes from Energizing Your Classroom. And it shows you perhaps where to pause as you read it. This is something you might do with your students. If you want to use it on yourself, probably the easiest way of doing that is to record it with pauses, because you need to allow processing time. And then you can play it back and just relax and do it, okay? but you'll be getting that link at the end. Okay, great. And finally, escape. And by the way, it is okay to escape. We sometimes feel guilty that we shouldn't be wasting time escaping, doing things which don't seem very productive. But it's really, really important, especially these days. That's, by the way, is just showing you my work surface that I sometimes need to escape from, to a different activity, to a different person, or to a different place. Doesn't matter. Just something different is really important. So I'll show you what my son does. That's his bicycle, by the way. That's not my son. With a view of the Tuscan hills. He's a teacher in Pisa, and his way of escaping is to cycle up into the hills. Well, we can't all do that, but we can do other things. I escape very often from my work surface and my living room area up to the attic upstairs. And I've got a view over the London rooftops and a rainbow in that one, which is really nice. And I can just spend time up there reading or doing Pilates, doing a crossword. Some of the other ways I've had of escaping during this time have been learning German, dancing. I'm going to mention dancing again in a moment. I go to a session on Mondays at 5 where we dance. Watching series on television. So I've managed to get to see for the first time ever Game of Thrones in its entirety. The Last Kingdom. Bridgerton, we started last night. The Crown, there's so many good ones. I also watch funny videos and I read funny books. So I'd like you to think for a moment, and this is great to do with students too. What do you do to escape? What are some of your favorite ways? Line of Duty, somebody's written. Yes, isn't it wonderful? So think for a moment and think of using this activity with your students. What do you do when you want to escape? They're all coming up so fast, it's hard to read them. Watching movies, gardening. Yes, oh, I wish I had a garden here. I would do that too. Yes. Watch British films, jolly good, yes. Dreaming, exercise, dance, somebody else dances. Oh, what a lot of ideas, wonderful. I can see you've all got plenty of ways of escaping. Like I say, use them and don't feel guilty about them. They are so, so useful. And I'm going to give you a little bit of homework. I just mentioned dancing. What I'd like you to do, please, for me, is when you get home, well, you are home, aren't you? But when this session finishes and you switch off your computer or close it for a moment, I'd like you to try to find Gloria Gaynor on YouTube, I Will Survive, and put it on and play it and have a wild dance to yourself just for a few moments to shake off the day, okay? Love you to do that. That's a very nice piece of homework for you to do. Dance, absolutely, yes. Shopping, someone has put. Okay. Love that song. Yes, I love that song too. I think it's a brilliant song. I have often played myself that song in moments when I've most needed to, put it that way. Swimming, walking, loads and loads. You're full of ideas. You don't need this webinar. Absolutely, you're doing brilliantly without it. Good, great, okay. And to kind of begin to wind down by saying to you, the E as well as escape is also E for easy and E for enough. So go easy on yourself and enough is enough. Be good enough. You do not have to be perfect. You do not have to survive brilliantly. You have to perhaps sometimes just muddle through. We are not perfect. We are not super. Sometimes we are, but it's okay not to be, okay? We do not have to be perfect all the time. That's too much of a strain. So that's my final message to you with a picture of a cake which I was fine with putting on the marzipan and the icing. Those both went swimmingly. But then I had a bit of a hitch when it came to the decorations because I didn't have any. And so I went for a duck, which I got from the bathroom. And it was certainly good enough. Okay. Last question to you to think about. What are you taking away from this webinar? You came with lots already. So you already had lots of ideas. That's obvious from what you're saying in the chat bar. Is there anything you're taking away? And the answer might be no, actually. Or it might be, yeah, this, that, and the other. And I'd like you just for a moment, and I'm going to give you a little bit of peace to think about that. So maybe there's something new you're taking, or maybe you're going to do more of something or start doing something. Just think for a moment. And if you want to share that by writing it in the chat bar, that's absolutely great. Do that. And if you don't want to share it, but just want to write it down somewhere, you can do that too. It is important, by the way, to write goals down. They make them kind of more, it means you're more committed to them. So in whatever form you want to write it down, write it down. Staying positive, I'll read some of them out as you're writing. Lots and lots of ideas. Okay, great. Session came at the right time. I'm very glad. Well done. Okay. So have a think, and I'll move us on to just a few useful books to add to that. I've mentioned Energizing Your Classroom. You'll also find these kinds of ideas in Jetstream. The guided visualization on page 153 is the one that you'll be getting a link to at the end. Good Enough is a book I only recently saw advertised. I haven't read it yet. I haven't even got it yet, but I will do, because that links to what I was just saying now. Anti-Cancer or Anti-Cancer is a wonderful book by that author, David Servan-Schreiber. It's not just about fighting cancer, it's about living your life to the full, and it's a fabulous, heartening book. Notes from a Friend is, I've mentioned Anthony Robbins a couple of times. That's a lovely little book, and you'll find the power questions in there. And finally, but not least, The 7 Habits of Highly Effective People. And you'll notice that, like many people who write books with 7, he's actually written an 8th book, or an 8th habit book, and it's called The 8th Habit. And you could actually go straight to that. You needn't read the first one, because he sums up the 7 in the second one. And I will tell you what the 8th habit is, because it's important for you as teachers, and it's what you're doing. The 8th habit goes, find your voice and enable others to find theirs. And that's what you're doing as teachers and trainers. That's exactly what you're doing. And what a wonderful thing to do. Isn't that fabulous? Well done. Bringing us to a close slowly, this is the lovely, lovely poem that was recited by Amanda Gorman on the day of Joe Biden's inauguration. You may have seen it. And I just wanted to show you the very first 2 lines and the last few lines, moving my chat box out of the way. And I'll read it to you. I don't normally like to read out a slide, but I think with a poem, it makes sense because you can really think about it. So she says at the beginning, when day comes, we ask ourselves, where can we find light in this never-ending shade? And then she says at the end of the poem, when day comes, we step out of the shade, aflame and unafraid. The new dawn blooms as we free it, for there is always light, if only we're brave enough to see it. If only we're brave enough to be it. Thank you so much again for spending your time. I'd like to finish with what I think is quite a funny slide that I took the other day, a photo I took in our high road, which kind of says it all. Thank you very much and goodbye. I'm going to hand you over to Lucy, who's going to wind things up. I've really enjoyed being with you. I can't see you. I'm just hoping you're there. I know you're there from the chat box. And to say bye-bye and hope to see you one day soon. Bye.